going back to your agency, what is the social world that we want to create? What is the world that we want to build in our relationship? What do we want this to feel like? And it's empowering to know you can construct this social world and you can live within this social world and you can enjoy this social world. You just need to know where you're trying to get and which relationship dynamics support that vision, which communication dynamics support the vision.
Hello and welcome. I'm Abbie. This is Stories Lived, Stories Told, and today I invite you to join me in conversation with Kongit Farrell as we take a communication perspective on creating healthy relationships. To take a communication perspective is to consider what we're making and how we're making it through our communication practices. This means we look closely at patterns, context, stories, and relationships, and that we use curiosity, mindfulness, collaboration, and dialogue to create better social worlds. So whether the topic of today's conversation is familiar to you or not, the hope is that using a communication perspective can reveal new ways of seeing and being for all of us. At the top of the episode, you heard our conversation partner today, Kongit Farrell. Kongit is a licensed marriage and family therapist with specialties in conflict resolution, trauma, couples therapy, and human sexuality. She is the founder of the Center for Healthy Marriage and is an adjunct professor of clinical psychology at Pepperdine University. Kongit is also a former CMM Institute fellow, and that's how I came to know her. This conversation is a continuation of our relationship series, which features conversations about different relationships with different kinds of therapists. I think I've said it before on the podcast, but I just love having therapists as my conversation partners. I've found every podcast I've done with therapists to be some of the most insightful, and my conversation with Kongit is certainly no exception. I'd like to let this conversation speak for itself for the most part, so let's go ahead and jump into the conversation with Kongit. Hi, Kongit. Thanks so much for joining me for this conversation today. I've been really looking forward to speaking with you.
This is a pleasure. I'm so happy you're doing this, number one, and to also be a guest.
Yes, I know we have a shared understanding of CMM and relationship to the CMM Institute, so I'm excited to hear more about that from you today. But to start, can you just introduce yourself? Tell us your story. I know that's a broad question, but just give us a little bit of an idea of who you are and maybe tell us about the work you do and why you feel passionate about it.
Yes. So I, like you, got fascinated with communication in undergrad. My undergraduate degree is in communication with an emphasis in human interaction. So I was naturally drawn to that, and I didn't know where that would take me or what path that would lead me on, but it was the most interesting thing
Yeah.
for me at the time. So after that, I had made the decision that, well, I really like dyads. I like learning about communication in the interpersonal context, two people, happening in interpersonal relationships. And also to, I mean, a little bit lesser degree in small groups, but I was really, really compelled to understand more about interpersonal communication between two people. And then I was started to think like, okay, so we have the thing that's happening between the messages that are being sent and received between two people, but what's happening inside? How are the messages being received and processed, and what's that? So that led me to wanting to apply to a clinical psychology program and wanting to understand more about both of them. And that was a program that I realized would cover both. Like, it would let me learn more about what's happening inside of individuals during communication episodes, and then also what's happening between. Yeah, so that brought me from the University of Southern California to Pepperdine University in Malibu. I went on and got a master's degree there in clinical psychology with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy. Because within that context, I was like, okay, I really, you can have a career that's about helping individuals and couples, like Yes, to have
Yes.
fruitful communication,
Hmm.
to learn how to communicate in a way that creates the social world that they decide they want to bring forth.
Hmm.
Because, you can understand all the psychological concepts and the internal mechanisms and make all that make sense, but it has to translate into a relationship somehow.
Yeah.
So that brought me to being a marriage and family therapist. So as I started that journey, it's an interesting journey. You start your clinical hours and you go to different populations and you get a sense of all that's out there. In the beginning, I actually didn't know for sure how I how I would get to couples or what I would do. So I just took the course and kind of made my rounds, but pretty quickly I was like, okay, I have to figure out how to serve couples, which kind of couples I would like to serve and which families I'd like to serve. So for me, it made sense to work with families of color. I looked at the market and I realized that there wasn't that many marriage and family therapists who specialized
Mm.
in couples of color, in families of color. And me, having grown up in a family of color, that I think what made me become very sensitive to dyadic communication was that I came from a high conflict household.
Mm.
And it made me become an interpersonal sleuth because I'm like, why is everyone arguing all the time? I'm so
Yes.
confused.
Yes.
I just was like, so I became very observant
Mm.
and I at a young age was becoming like a mediator and a fixer and a trying to understand her.
Yep.
And in a way, like now I reflect on that and I'm like, my career kind of came from a trauma.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, wow,
Mm.
boy, did that, like I wish I wouldn't have had that experience, but also has it made me proficient, highly
Mm.
proficient in what I do? Yes, because I
Yes.
have experience, So, yeah, so that's how I eventually made my way to, okay, I'm going to do couples and I'm going to do families of color. I'm very familiar with some of the issues, some of the things that work, don't work. That's who I want to serve. So, Abbie, I hung my shingle and I'm like, that's who I'm going to work with. But Abbie, that is who came to me, but that's not all who came to me,
Okay.
which was a big surprise. Caucasian couples came, Korean couples came. So even though I had kind of had a where I thought I would go, what came to me was different.
Mm.
And I embraced that. And I've learned so much from my clients in addition to serving my clients. It's been fantastic. I wouldn't change it for the world. And as I went deeper into my clinical work, I realized a few other things. If I'm really going to serve these couples and help them build a foundation or repair their relationships, I need additional training. I need additional training in sexuality. So I got an ASEX certification. I'm ASEX certified. That helped. I realized I need additional training in trauma and manage the management of trauma within this dyad. So I got certified as a trauma therapist. And then lastly, the big other part that I'm like, you not only do you have to invest in this, but you really have to invest in this is conflict resolution. Huge,
Huge.
huge, huge. And so I was like, okay, so that's how I found the program at Columbia because I'm like, this one I have to go big because it's just present in all of the people who are coming to therapy. It's present in some sort of way. So I need to really know what I'm talking about and what I'm doing.
Hmm.
With that goal, I applied to the program and I applied for a CMM scholarship. And I talked about my work and what I'm trying to do and just I don't want to say I was desperate, but I was like highly motivated to understand more about communication and why certain things are not working and how can we name these things and naming to increase understanding because sometimes if you just name something that will help the dyad in
Oh,
their
yeah.
communication.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know?
Yes.
So that's what brought me to CMM, and oh, what a treasure, what a treasure trove.
Yeah.
Yes, so that is my journey. I am wrapping up the program in May. I am so happily taking concepts from the program and CMM and applying them to couples, already applying CMM concepts and seeing such improvement, especially things around cosmopolitan communication and looking at just elevating our standards around how we interact, our self awareness, and our capacity to communicate, like, is said in CMM, in a way that will create the social worlds that we want. Um, so that's how I got here. That's my story.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing all that. And it's neat to hear some similarities and then some differences in my own story that I kind of ended up in a similar place as you with this, real interest and desire to just learn so much and take in as much as I could about communication. But I would say came from a zero conflict family. So I
Oh,
kind of joke about, oh, I wanted to study communication because my family really didn't do it, or it seemed like to me, there was not a lot of what we call meta communication. There's
mhm.
not a lot of talk about choices, I would say, is just kind of, this is the way things are.
Mm,
And so that's what is so exciting and I would say like empowering to me about CMM is this real focus on choices. And like you were saying just now, the way that you can kind of take ownership of your social world and learn to make new choices that actually serve you feels
yes.
so important. And the other thing I'm hearing in your story that seems like a shared passion is that this kind of, step one of naming things. I love the language. It feels, so important and meaningful to dig into, even just having the language to name what you're experiencing. And then also, kind of step two, where do you go from there of turning that into action or like practices or real tangible things? And that's really part of what drives my goal with the podcast too, is that I, when I was sitting in my communication classes, I thought, well, you shouldn't have to be a communication major to get access to all this information. This is stuff everybody should know. So
Yeah.
how can we take it from, from theory, from these textbooks to something that's accessible to people, that's really applicable? So that sounds like we have a shared passion of turning communication theory into communication practice.
Oh, yes. And I mean, wouldn't you agree that little things around understanding and just knowing some of the concepts make
Oh,
a huge
yeah.
difference? Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, and I'll add to that, even from like a clinical psychology standpoint, one of the big frameworks that we have is cognitive behavioral therapy. And it's an evidence-based approach where we're looking at our thoughts and we're thinking about our thoughts and trying to understand if the way that we are thinking is obstructing reality in a way that leads to emotional responses that are not adaptive. Okay. So, just with some of the CMM concepts where you are giving name to
Mhm.
things, just by giving name, people say, I feel less anxious because
Yep.
now I know this is something, people know about it. There's something that can be done about this thing that I just thought was this blob, scary thing happening inside of me,
Yeah.
which speaks really to this power of naming and then building
Definitely.
upon the name. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I talked about before on my podcast that my experience in like a communication class, for example, was less like, oh, I'm learning something completely new and foreign, and almost more of like a recognition that once someone said, oh, well, this is called an aggressive conflict style, or this is called an avoidant conflict style, or, any of a number of helpful kind of theories or models. It's more of a, oh, yes, I have actually already experienced that. I already know that to be true, but now
Yes.
you've given me the language for it. And I think that's powerful. And that I imagine is, why people appreciate therapy. You're maybe not telling people anything new that they don't already know. you're just giving them new language to help understand what they're experiencing.
Oh, and let's take it a step further because now that there is a name and there is a phenomenon, now we have created a world now where you're not alone.
Mhm.
Now we live in this world where we're here together
Yeah.
and we can start to go, let me share what's in this world, and so the client is starting to be like, oh, I'm not alone. And then what I've noticed from there, little seeds of agency start to spring up. It starts to be like, oh, well, wait a minute, if this is a cognitive construct, then I can shape my construct.
Yeah.
And I can't control what this person is doing with theirs, but I surely can do a lot of work with mine. And clients get empowered.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's incredible to see how something like communication training can really result in personal empowerment, relational empowerment, and truly the creation of this new social world.
Yeah. While we're here talking about language, I want to give us a chance to talk about a definition of healthy relationships. I think people want to be in healthy relationships. I imagine your goal as a marriage and family therapist is to help people create healthy relationships. But just to pause again on this language, how would you define a healthy relationship?
It's a really good question. It's a really good question, and it has parts to it.
Hmm.
So, if I am looking at a couple, this is from a therapist standpoint. Therapists have legal mandates, and the legal mandates, in a sense, define what a healthy relationship is. Because if the relationship's dynamics cross any of these mandates, then I have an ethical or a legal duty to report people
Oh,
to whatever the agency is.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So if we're dealing with any of these sheltered population, children, dependent adults, elderly, etc., the standard for healthy is defined by the law. And, I think the law defines it in a kind of rudimentary way, which is focused on like physical violence or very obvious forms of emotional abuse or financial abuse that I think pretty much anyone would look at and be like, well, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's not good. But it doesn't really go into nuance. It doesn't really go into good to optimal. We're not talking about optimal relationship functioning based on these legal terminologies. We're not. So, what I do when I work with clients is I state the boundary, like these are the ethical and legal mandates that must be met in the definition of a healthy relationship. And then I go, because we're going for optimal. What is your vision?
Yeah.
Like, what is your vision for the quality of relationship that you would like to have? Then I build with them based on their vision. And some people come in, they're like, my vision is I want you to feel comfortable. I want you to feel excited. I want you to feel, measured. I want to feel whatever they say. And some people go, I have never been asked a question like this before in my
Mm.
whole life. I have no idea. So then starts to work for those people of, well, let's try to find out,
Hmm.
does this mean for you? What does it mean for you as a couple? How do you want your day-to-day interaction to feel? What kind of life do you hope to build from the foundation of this relationship? Because, and this is very important, if you want to build a life, let's say with your partner, where you are running businesses and establishing foundations and you have kids, well, the foundation for that type of relationship is going to be very different than if you're with your partner and you say, you know what, we just want to live out in the countryside and, work in the local bakery. Neither is better or worse, but what constitute, an
Hmm.
optimal relationship is going to be different based on people's vision and goals. So I have found taking that time to really work with people and understand what the healthy relationship is, baseline and optimize, helps me then to go, okay, this is how we get here. And these are the skills we need. You
Yep.
know, if you're going to have one of these high performance lives, certain things like schedules, habit, discipline, like that is much more important than if that's not your choice. I just want to make sure I'm making
Yes, yes, definitely. And I
sense.
appreciate you bringing it up that, I can ask you what's a healthy relationship and you'd have your own definition and every single other person would have their own different definition and none of
Yes.
those are right or wrong. It's just formed out of our own experiences or like you're saying what we're valuing that could maybe get us back to, our highest levels of context. What are we being guided by in our social worlds that's motivating those choices we're making?
Yes. Even going back to your agency, what is the social world that we want to create?
Right.
What is the world that we want to build in our relationship? What do we want this to feel like? And it's empowering to know you can construct this social world and
Mhm.
you can live within this social world and you can enjoy this social world. You just need to know where you're trying to get and which relationship dynamics support that vision, which
Mhm.
communication dynamics support the vision. If you say you want harmony in your relationships, unbridled expression is not going to be the communication strategy that one would recommend.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's a big one because sometimes people say, well, I want to be able to say what I say and do what I do and feel how I feel whenever I want to do it. Okay. That could work if the goal is not harmony. If the
Right.
goal is harmony, then we have to approach it with more tact, thoughtfulness. Maybe we can construct something like a catharsis once every 2 weeks where you sit down, make sure everybody's not hungry, irate, and then take 2 hours where you say, okay, now we're going to go into this episode where the rule is just express, right? But then you would also have to know if you do that, you may need to go into an episode that's about repair attempts.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can do it. We just have to know what are the dynamics that support
Mhm.
what we want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that, and I, wanted to kinda ask that question about how do you define a healthy relationship and then work backwards from there to talk about, maybe some, like, practices, communication practices, and one I'm already kinda hearing come out that I do think is so valuable is this practice of taking a moment to pause because I think, we can get really caught up in just doing our lives and not really assessing if the way we're acting is aligned with what our hopes for our social world are. And so if you can pause and kind of look forward and say, okay, what's my idea of my best social world, my better social world? What do I want for myself? What do I want for my work, for my family? And then go backwards from there and say, okay, how would I act if that was true that I wanted those things? That's really helpful, I think, for yeah, deciding how to act because you might see, like you're saying, another couple or another person who's acting in a certain way, and you could go, "Oh, that really seems to be working for them," but they might have totally different goals than you, so it wouldn't work
Yes.
for you, right? So you're like, that's your own practice in and something you not that you do once, you could do that every day. Check in with yourself. Do I still want the same thing for my social world? Okay, I'm going to keep acting like this, or I need to change my behavior.
Yes. That is why, like, such questions as what is healthy when we get beyond that, like, baseline around
Mhm.
safety and non-abuse becomes really subjective because, there's different personality types. Some people are more excitable and they can tolerate more distress or
Yeah.
ambiguity. And so, what is healthy for them is emotions and excitement and right, and then some people are just like, "I can't deal with this," sometimes biopic, people from, African American community who have gone through so much trauma already, they're like, "The last thing I want to deal with is drama.
Mhm.
Give me stable, give me
Yeah.
quiet, give me" right? but both would be healthy.
Yeah.
It just depends on who you are, who your partner is, and what world you want to build and what you want to
Hmm.
experience. But yes, to your point, my experience has taught me that having the vision first and working backward tends to get clients to their goal in a bit more of I don't want to say expedient, but it just tends to flow better that
Sure.
way,
Yeah.
you know. However, because I'm solution focused, like I have a solution focused orientation, I know that, therapeutic services or communication coaching is not cheap, and I don't want to keep you on my couch longer than you ought to be here. So I'm always thinking, like, how do we make this efficient and how do we get you closer to your goal?
Yeah.
Some people may have a different approach that really is just exploratory. So that's another way of doing it that is not, again, not right or wrong. I just like to work from the vision first
Yeah.
and getting, how are we going to get to the vision?
Yeah. Are there other practices off the top of your head, maybe that you really like to share with your clients, or ones that you use in your own lives and relationships?
I think one of the most transformational, and this is one that's kind of come up for me from the training at Columbia, from the training through CMM as really just a core principle and seeing it work in couples therapy. When couples are getting into negative feedback loops where the communication is stalling, the thing that I've noticed that is the best escape valve is when each person takes radical accountability in that moment. So each person has to go, what am I doing in this moment that's leading to this feedback loop?
Mm.
Because as long as each person is saying, well, you're responsible for the feedback, you're responsible for the loop isn't breaking. But having that shift and saying, hey, radical accountability moment, what are each of you contributing to what's happening right now? You cannot say anything about the other person. Then we'll get these interesting moments
Mm.
where people are like, I am impatient. I'm a stubborn old goat. Like I am just unrelenting in this point. And the minute they say it, boom, we're in another social world. The feedback loop is broken.
Mm.
So that has been one of my great understandings from CMM and from Columbia. And like seeing that break a communication pattern,
Yeah.
it can break a serpentine process
Yeah.
and start a new process. So I think that's a really big one that
Definitely.
I wish more people would employ or
Hmm.
go to employ in a moment when you're stuck.
Hmm. Yeah. As I think about that practice, I imagine that why it's not already more of a common practice, or why more people don't already use it, is that doing something like taking accountability feels like giving up power in a conflict or in a relationship. Maybe it feels kind of dangerous even to do that, when in reality, it actually, like you're saying, sets you on a whole new path and gives you the greatest chance at repair or a healthy, conflict happening. Which, again, yeah, not to say that it's easy, because that is one of the things that when I first was learning about CMM, I felt like, I don't know if I want to believe that, that part that's asking you to really look at the way you contribute to the patterns you're in. And again, it's that kind of, two sides of the same coin. On one side, it's really empowering to look at the effect that you have in your social world. On the other side, you maybe don't want to acknowledge it as much because it's easier to place blame on other people.
Oh, Abby, yes. Well, I have to tell you, like, this was a whole conversation I had with a friend of mine, and she's a teacher. And so we were having this conversation about like what is happening in the classrooms And, the accountability conversation started like emerging, right?
Mm,
Okay, we're understanding their behavior kind of based on social things that are happening in the world and oppression and things that are very real and have happened to these young people. And then this other conversation about like, well, what can they do? What can be done about this, right? Some of these higher level social things will take a little bit of time. It may take more time than they have in this one classroom to be
mhm.
resolved. So what can happen in the interim, right? Like what can they do? And the issue of accountability, personal accountability came up, right? And so I'm looking at it from my CMM background, therapy, et cetera, position. And I'm like, why wouldn't some of the students want to just be accountable and say, part of this is this issue, but part of this is I am a little lazy. I don't want to do all this right now. And it is
Mm.
laziness actually, because I do have time after school and I do play video games, right?
Right.
And it was so interesting what she told me. And I've just been really reflecting on that. She was like, I think it's hard because they already feel like there are so many things that are wrong with them. And
Wow.
so, right? Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, now I was like, that makes sense to me as a barrier to accountability because based on the messages that you're
Mm,
receiving, there's already so many things wrong. Now you're going to tell me there's one more thing wrong. So, I don't quite know the resolution to that, but it's been something I've been thinking a lot about. Like, how can you become accountable without registering it as another deficiency?
right.
You know,
Mhm.
I mean, that's a real world like issue that I am wrestling with and thinking about how to, why does it work with some clients and not the others? Why is it that some clients, you bring up accountability and they're like, "Oh, yes," right? I because like you said before, they know the other side of it, right? They know so much power is on the other side of it. They're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I know I'm lazy sometimes. Who cares? What do we do?
Mhm.
How do we get people there?"
Yeah.
You know?
My first thought is there's in the communication community, I guess I would say, kind of okay, we need to move away from the transmission model. Person A sends message to person B and acting like that's all that communication is, because that's way oversimplistic. So immediately when you're talking about that situation, I'm thinking about the space, environment, context, whatever you'd want to say, and that matters so much for the kind of communication that is able to happen. And that was, kind of a revolutionary idea to me
Mm,
as someone that, again, maybe grew up with a very black and white way of thinking. You're looking at the communication that you can see or that feels obvious. Say, okay, well, that's communication, but really there's more stories going on there, and more factors and contexts that are affecting the space. So I think about, if you're looking at an individual, a student maybe, say, okay, why won't that person take accountability? But you're not going to find the answer there. This is kind of thing that you'd need to really zoom out and say, what's going on? Okay, maybe in the classroom, the teacher is making it a very, word I've heard before is like blame positive space. Maybe there
mhm.
is a lot of empathy and self kindness in that space. So that makes the student feel like they can take accountability. Maybe at home, the student is not receiving that. There's a lot of blame, there's a lot of shame. So that space is, having the opposite effect.
I love it. And I think so this is one of those areas where communication and psychology have one of the same thinkers, the systems thinking.
Hmm.
I'm forgetting the theorist's name who that's exactly what they say. Like that is one lens, that's what's happening in the individual. But what if you pull back? What's happening
Hmm.
in this system and this system and this system and between the systems that are all contributing to where we're landing in this moment about this thing.
Hmm.
right? It isn't linear. It isn't just linear.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's a great thing for me to continue to think about with that,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
that,
That's
with that
fascinating.
challenge.
Yeah. And it is
But
a challenge.
it's a challenge, and it's especially a challenge like within the framework of people coming to you for change. Like, and I think that that's a
Mm,
important thing to remember, like keep in mind about a therapeutic context. Like if people are coming to a solution focused like therapeutic experience, they are looking for homeostatic disruption, and so I think that's oftentimes what's going on in the back of my mind, being that that's the context. But it's not the only context. I mean, some of these issues we can talk about like liberated from that, change model context. And we can talk about it in the context of like all the ways to understand what's happening in a situation
hmm
and all the reasons why. And, I think that that's fruitful and beneficial too. And I think that was a lot of the work that I too found liberating in the CMM context. And it gave birth to a lot of creative ideating, because it wasn't just in the context of like, we have to do this for our clients and solve this thing. And I think that's a big place where the therapeutic context differs from just a communication context,
Yeah.
you know? And it shows like the division between the two. And I don't want to say there's constraints in the therapeutic world, but I don't want to say it's not, I don't know if it's constraints, but
hmm
some of the things you are not as limited by in just a communication world.
Yeah.
Is that we
Yes. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm so glad you bring that up because I think that's a question that I think about a lot is that obviously you and I share a belief that communication can be a positive transformative force in our lives.
yes.
And I would go, maybe take this step further, just maybe a different way of saying what you're saying is that if someone's coming to you in a therapeutic setting, they on some level also, already buy in. They have a buy in to the
Yes.
fact that change can happen and it will happen through this communication that's going on.
Yes.
And then there's everybody else. Maybe that's what you're getting at, that the context is different in a therapy setting versus in any other setting. There's not that context of, okay, we all agree. We can go from there. And that's what I think about with the podcast is that how
Yes.
can I reach more people and how can I how can I, help people to have that buy-in to say, yes, communication has the potential to be a positive, transformative force.
Yes. Yes. How do you get to, I mean, I do hope conversations like this
hmm
help. Like, I mean, I try, when people come into the therapeutic context, like we got a little buy-in, right? When they do their
Right.
discovery session, a little bit.
hmm
And then one of the things I say outright is, this is not therapy of 1975. We actually do have evidence-based things that can, and that kind of helps move the needle for that
hmm
like buy-in. So I think I agree. I think things like podcasts where people are again being exposed to what we talked
Yeah.
about, naming something, hearing the examples, like allows that new space, like even if it's just this much of a degree of a shift
hmm
over time, that can just flower into something really amazing. Just to know that this space called communication can change your social world. I don't
Yeah.
think people like, does that land well enough?
Right. Yeah.
You know, social world meaning every part of your life that includes human interaction, which is every part.
hmm yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is every part. I mean, even your inner world,
hmm
even your relationship with yourself. These kind of CMM communication concepts can impact how you communicate with yourself. How do you talk to yourself? Are
hmm
you aggressive with how you talk to yourself? Are you not compassionate with how you talk to yourself? Like what communication patterns do you use in your conversations with yourself? Again, an area where CMM can help. If you have that awareness to say, well, I'm in a negative feedback loop about how I think about this group of people, and I can't get out of it. You have that awareness, then you can go, okay, well, how do I get out of it?
Mhm. I'm curious about, maybe for the people that need a little evidence or, a little something for them to get buy-in, thinking about people who are listening to this. I'm curious if you have a story, or what is the story that you have about communication that lets you believe that it could be a positive transformative force?
Well, that's a really great question. I mean, okay, I'm gonna date myself. But Biggie Smalls, the rapper, would be
Yes.
would say, "I'm not only the client, I'm the player president." Okay, so I am doing what I do because I've seen the difference that it has made in the quality of my life and what it has allowed, the type of life that it has allowed me to live and experience, and the type of relationships I'm able to have coming from an environment where I didn't think it was possible. I didn't think, I mean, coming from the type of environment that I emerged from and leaving that environment and entering into the world and having to interact with the world with extremely limited communication skills, extremely limited understanding of people or communication dynamics. Those initial worlds that I was creating for myself were awful.
Mhm.
They were awful. And I'm just like, but it took like saying to myself, like, whatever it takes, I don't want no more of this. So at least I could identify there's something about what I'm saying or doing that is leading to some of this. I don't want it. So what am I saying and what am I doing? And I think that there was I will say a desperation for
Mm.
that. Like I was desperate
Yeah.
to not repeat. And I think for me that energy pushed me into the work. Like just like there has to be a way that it to get out of this. So I say these things are effective from experience and seeing where I came from and the type of social worlds that I was manifesting to the type of social worlds I manifest now. You know, I've been married for 13 years. Is marriage perfect? Absolutely not. There are a lot of things that you have to be willing to work around, work through, work around, forgive, hold accountable, all these things. But to have the communication skills
Mhm.
to sustain 13 years in marriage and it be a good marriage,
Yeah. Yes.
I'm proud of that. Because that wasn't going to come about naturally from where I started.
Mhm.
To be able to be in relationship with my son and know to listen and empathize and to be aware of cues
Mhm.
and to try to understand his social world. Um, yes. Yes, this is an example of the power of this kind of work
Mhm.
because again, how would I have known or how would I even have had the confidence to say, yeah, I'm going to try marriage. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and, you
Mhm.
know, go for motherhood, which were important for me and things that I wanted. Yes. Friendships. I have friendships that have now it's coming upon 25-year friendships.
Mm.
Building social worlds, communication skills, self-awareness. Not perfect, but I know it's better than what it would have been without these skills.
Mhm.
That I know.
It actually blows my mind how we think that we're just gonna stumble into effective communication, that we take for granted that, obviously everyone is learning communication skills or practices, through their families, through their peers, through school. Not to say they're learning the most effective communication skills,
Yes.
or practices. And so, yeah, I just, hearing you answer the question I asked, making me think about my own answer to that question in a different way than I have before is that, yeah, I think what the social world that I understood was a very simple one.
Mm,
And so learning about communication gives that social world. I'm thinking about like if I've painted a picture for myself of the social world, it's like black and whites. And
mm.
then learning all of these things about communication has added so much color and depth to that picture. And this is not a perfect metaphor, but I talk a lot about, a communication perspective being like a pair of glasses. Like it's a lens, like it is a lens that I use to, approach my life. So I think about it like putting on a pair of glasses. And
Yes.
I'm thinking about, if you have like 3D glasses on, or maybe like a bifocal, or those like you'd look through like a kaleidoscope
Yeah.
pair of binoculars or something. That was like a toy I think I used to have. I'm thinking about how you can see things one way and then put on a pair of glasses and see it for something totally different. So I'm thinking about that to me, when I put on my communication perspective, when I put on my communication glasses, it gives so much more depth to what I'm looking at. And that is
Oh,
so valuable to me. And again, like that's my buy-in story. I get, that's how I've come to know communication as this positive, transformative force, because I have been transformed by
yes.
communication. That's, I think, why I feel so passionate about sharing it with other people, because I'm like, everyone should experience this. Everyone should be able to feel empowered in their communication. Because again, if we're all going through life trying to do friendships, trying to do romantic relationships, trying to be parents, trying to do work relationships, we got to have some tools in our back pocket, to give us a chance at all.
Oh my gosh.
Healthy ones, right?
Oh, I love your metaphor. Oh, I think it's such a good
Good.
intro point.
I'm
I
glad
do.
it resonates. Yeah.
It does because as soon as you said it, I had the vision. I had my picture.
Uh-huh.
As soon as you said it and gave me that framework of a communication picture, I saw what mine was. If we're looking at it from like an artistic standpoint, mine was like one of those paintings where you just take everything and throw it
Uh-huh.
the canvas and you're just like, what is this thing? What is
Mhm.
it? And then my communication glasses were the things that said, oh, there's lines here and there's shapes here. So for me, it
Mhm.
like gave a structure to something that was like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
You know? But again, it's a fantastic metaphor. And I think everyone can reflect on this and think, what is your communication picture?
Yeah.
And then when hopefully they start to maybe look into a few communication concepts or CMM concepts, how does the picture change? Oh,
Yeah. The way I'm hearing it in the context of our conversation so far is kind of a part A being the what do you want for your social world? Okay, now come back to the present and enact that. This is kind of part B of that, and saying, okay, now do some reflection, look into your past. What was your picture of your social world? Okay, now that you have some of these communication practice, come back to the present, put on those glasses, and what is it now and what has changed? So obviously, there's value in reflecting forward and reflecting backward. And again, talk about that zoom in, zoom out. There's value in both of those lenses and perspectives as well, for sure.
I think there's a lot of zooming in and zooming out, as you go on the communication journey. There's certainly the zooming in and zooming out of your past and like what are the communication scripts and patterns that you inherited. Some
Hmm.
people are fortunate in that they inherit amazing scripts and they're not even aware. Like my husband had an amazing family script. Like
Mm.
everyone in his family is still married. So he came into it with this great script. And I was like, I've had to work so hard
Yeah.
That's like it's a script, but he just inherited it. But you could see the difference in quality of life
Mhm.
with just the scripts you inherit,
Yeah.
you know? So I think that certainly that lens of like what scripts that you inherited and where you are now is an important one. Another one is the script of like the forecasting forward of like, okay, where do you want to go from here is super important. The lens of who are you in all of this is really important. And a lens of empathy is really important too. Zooming in and zooming out on like what is your communication partner going through? What could
Yes.
it be? You know, because this is a big one, right? Like, especially when we're talking about things like social anxiety, going back into a little bit of this therapist mode. Sometimes people who struggle with social anxiety have forecasted already what the other person had
Yes.
thought and interpret, right, but we don't really know.
Mhm.
You know, that's a communication episode, and if we can just learn to be like, "That was a communication episode. I really truly don't know everything that person thinks. We'll probably have another episode. Let's just see."
Mhm.
That's yet again another transformative moment,
Yeah.
you know, where you allow a person a little maybe more space, a little more empathy, a little more time, say, "This is just an episode."
Yeah.
I don't know where the communication story will end. That's another one too that I think is a big one in couples.
Yeah.
Sometimes two people, I think, in couples, in the couples context, they get married to their partner's past scripts and don't allow space for change.
Mhm.
And that can sometimes hinder like the communication transformation. This actually happens a lot. You know, we'll make some progress like with communication transformation, and people are saying, okay, well, I know now I can get off the freeway here. And when this pattern happens, I can make this different choice. And the
Mm.
partner will go, well, you didn't do it last time.
Uh-huh.
Well, that is not helpful.
Yep.
You know, like,
Yeah.
can we learn, you know, perhaps this idea that if you're in a change environment and you're working at it and you're experimenting and exploring, you know, leave space for your partner to evolve. And what does that mean for you? And are you capable of letting people evolve or not? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, another um, space where you know your own communication skills and skill level and understanding can facilitate transformation in your relationship, or it can pull it back.
Yeah. Conja, I feel like I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours more. So much to say. You're generating so many exciting ideas in me, but I want to move on to this kind of last idea so that we can have some time with it before we wrap up. And that's to use that language that we've already touched on a little bit of our better social worlds.
Mhm.
And, maybe this question is really just a chance to recap some of what we've already talked about, but it's kind of how I like to end my conversations, to think about what is it that we need to be doing right now. We've kind of talked about the better social worlds of healthy relationships, of communication as a positive transformative force. So, based in your knowledge and experience and expertise, what would you say needs to change in our communication for us to create those better social worlds in our relationships?
I think the bottom line with like when I say bottom line, I mean kind of like what is the first step on that
Hmm.
journey is something that we've talked about before. But I think it's getting buy-in that this is an important, potentially transformational area where with I don't want to say I don't want to say minimal investment, but I would want to say accessible investment. You know,
Mm-hmm.
in order to increase your communication literacy, you don't have to like be building a rock,
Yes.
like it's not all that. You can take an hour a week and say, I am going to increase my communication literacy. And if you do 1 hour a week for 4 to 6 weeks, you will see a transformation
Mhm.
because the things that we kind of talked about in the beginning will happen. You'll go, oh, there's a name for that?
Mhm.
Oh, tell me more about what this thing is and what is it? Oh, yeah. Oh, and you mean to say there's something else I can do instead? Now, what is that? I think that that is the first step.
Yeah.
Literacy. I
Mhm.
because we can't get into any of the fun stuff. We can't get into like understanding these serpentine models and like disrupting feedback loop
Uh-huh.
until we know what a feedback loop is.
Yeah.
And we can have that moment like you were saying, Abby, where you get the concept and then you're like, ooh, I am doing that feedback loop, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Then we got some, now we can start to do some work.
Yeah.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
maybe you can tell me this, like maybe you have more insight into it, because I think we may be in a different generation. Um, I am curious to know, like, when you look at young people today, like my guess is a barrier is literacy. Are you aware of any other barriers that
Mm.
maybe I don't see?
That's a great question. It's so interesting to me for people to talk about, yeah, maybe like generational differences and styles of communication, because again, not isolated. You actually probably can't talk about one generation without talking about another. So I'm thinking about it's so hard to do something if you don't know that it exists or if you don't know it's an option for you. Again, why naming is important. Let's return to that. It's
Mhm.
so hard to creatively come up with new ways of being and communicating if you have never ever seen those modeled for you before.
Okay.
And so I wonder if part of why I'd say my generation, or you could probably, go back in time and apply this to literally any generation, but why my generation maybe struggles is because healthy, effective, curious, empathetic communication practices were not modeled for us. And so it's like a starting from scratch almost.
Okay.
I think that, yeah, I would love to think about that question more, but that's kind of and I'm not saying, it's not our fault. Blame our parents. That's not the whole story either.
Mhm.
But I think that if we're thinking about barriers
Mhm.
in anything, if you're trying to learn a new skill, if you're trying to, I don't know, speak a new language, like, oh my God, so hard to start from scratch and make something new, do something new, make a new choice. That's so hard to do if it hasn't been modeled for you. And that's why I guess I would say, as part of a like step two to the one that you offered, or to say, if you're someone that's just like trying on communication practices or trying on communication as a lens or as a perspective or as a positive force, I think part of that trying on is just to start to see everything in terms of choices.
Mm.
And again, maybe that doesn't resonate with everyone, but that's really what it was so central to it for me,
Mhm.
was that all of a sudden I had choices where I literally thought I didn't have any choices before. And I was seeing the choices that other people were making. And I was thinking about the different choices I could make and what would happen as a result of each of those. And you can start to see the differences and walk down each of those paths and have new perspective and be curious about that.
Mhm. I really appreciate you sharing that, and like I think the generational question is an important one. Like I think when I was at a different stage in my learning, and I would wish and hope that people from different generations would ask me, and like want to hear, so I feel like it's important to ask. And,
Mhm.
sometimes like we were talking about before, like the social context of a generation, like how did you enter the world? What was happening
Yeah.
in the world, like can shape. And so I thank you for sharing about what it's been for you, at least your interpretation of what your generation kind of the barriers. And it actually leads me to this really pivotal moment in my own education. I was in a philosophy class. I will never forget this. The professor was like, Kanjit, can you tell me something that you know that you know? And I'm like, what kind of dumb question? But I was like, yes, yes, I know that my name is Kanjit. He was like, great. He's like, can you tell me something that you know that you don't know? And I'm like, yeah, I know that I don't know how to fly a plane. And he was like, great. He was like, now tell me something that you don't know that you don't know. And
Mm,
I was like, I don't know what I don't know to infinity, right? And he was like, yes. So always stay open.
mm.
And I was like, there's an infinite number of things that I don't even know that I don't even know.
Yes.
Okay. I've been open since.
Yes. Yeah, that would have stuck with me too. Yeah.
Stuck with me. That stuck with me. I said, okay, right. And it goes back to like kind of what we were talking about earlier. Like, how do you build that curiosity? Well, that was enough to build curiosity for
Mhm.
me.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, that's such a great note to end on. I love that you brought that up. Thanks for sharing that last story. But just throw it back to you one more time. Is there anything else that you would want to share before we wrap up?
Not share, but I mean, share to say thank you for doing this, Abby. I think this is amazing. I think you're going to touch a lot of people and get people excited for this. I think this is one of those spaces where, yes, there could be things happening in the world, but is there a space that you might work in where just you and your couch and your book and a cup of coffee can do something?
Mm.
You can do something here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so thank you for doing this.
Thank you for being a part of it and for saying that. That's definitely my hope. And this conversation has energized me so much and given me so much that's going to stick with me and I'm going to want to keep thinking about. So I imagine that it will do the same for other people as well.
Awesome.
Thanks, Kanjit.
Thank you.
Okay, that is all for our conversation with Kanjit. At the end of each episode, I like to offer some questions to reflect on, which act as a next turn, so the conversation doesn't stop just because the episode does. Today, the question I would like to ask you to reflect on is, how can you begin to embrace communication as a transformative force for change in your life? You're welcome to reach out to me to share your reflections on that question, as well as any of your own questions or ideas. You can do that through email, the website, by commenting on Instagram and YouTube, or by commenting on the CMM Institute Substack, where you can find all the episodes of this podcast. And links to all of those places are in the show notes. And the reason I invite you to share your reflections with me is to stay in dialogue. Other great ways to stay in dialogue include following the show wherever you listen, leaving a rating and review, and most importantly to me, sharing this episode with someone you want to invite into the conversation. I am supported by the CMM Institute for Personal and Social Evolution. This podcast is just one of many initiatives that focus on empowering us in our communication to create better social worlds. You can go to the link that I have included in the show notes to check out other CMM Institute initiatives like Cosmo Activities, our line of social emotional resources for kids of all ages. And for kids of all ages, we also have the Cosmopolis 2045 project, which is its own website, our vision for a future where we all engage in and prioritize dialogue, centering communication. We also have the CMM Institute Press. So if you are looking to read more about coordinated management of meaning, or just generally about using communication to create our social worlds, then definitely check out the CMM Institute Press. tab on the CMM Institute website. Again, links that can take you to all of these places are in the show notes. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being curious, and thank you for being a part of this story. I'm Abbie, and this has been Stories Lived, Stories Told.